Szanowni Państwo, jest nam niezmiernie miło powitać Was wszystkich w kolejnym Weinnovator.clubie. To wyjątkowe spotkanie, bo będziemy mieli, mamy nadzieję, bo Rafał Modrzewski jeszcze nie dołączył, ale mamy nadzieję, że będziemy mieli 3 prezesów. Prezesa Józefa Aschbechera, który jest szefem ESY, prezesa Grzegorza Wrochnę, prezesa Polsy, no i właśnie czekamy na Rafała Modrzewskiego. Dzisiaj jest wyjątkowy dla nas dzień, bo po pierwsze jest to ostatni w tym sezonie Innovators, wyjątkowi goście, zawsze są wyjątkowi, ale ja myślę, że aż takiej rangi gości dawno nie mieliśmy, zgodzisz się może, Paweł, ze mną?
Absolutnie tak.
I jeszcze do tego Agencja Rozwoju Przemysłu razem z Pawłem dzisiaj przyznała kolejne staże wraz z całym sektorem kosmicznym. Także idealny dzień, żeby porozmawiać o 10-leciu Polski w ESA. Paweł?
Tak, celebrujemy od pewnego czasu różnymi wydarzeniami te 10 lat. Nie chcemy, żeby ta rocznica przeszła tak bez echa. Myślę, że to jest doskonała okazja, żeby pokazać naszemu społeczeństwu, że jest sektor kosmiczny, że on coraz więcej znaczy dla gospodarki. Małymi wydarzeniami, większymi wydarzeniami, ale tak, żebyśmy byli obecni w świadomości. Myślę, że doskonale robi tą promocję Polska Agencja Kosmiczna. Też staramy się w tym odrobinkę pomagać. Chociażby takim wydarzeniem jak dzisiaj.
Okay, so let's switch into English and let's give the floor to Professor Wrochna. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me briefly introduce the topic of today's seminar, namely celebration of the 10 years presence of Poland in European Space Agency. I mean, it does not mean that we have started from scratch 10 years ago. I think we should go back 550 years ago when Mikołaj Kopernik was born, because without him, nothing would be possible what we are talking about today. We will celebrate 550th anniversary of his birth next year. Last year, we have celebrated 100 years anniversary of Stanisław Lem, our famous science fiction writer. And again, he was inspiring so many young people and not so young. So I think without him, the space sector in Poland would not be in such a good shape as we can see today. But more recently, what it was really necessary to start Space Invader was the rocket and the rocket fuel. And the rocket fuel would not be possible without Ignacy Łukasiewicz, who first used the natural oil to make use of that, to make gasoline. And then you need to burn it, and you need liquid oxygen. And again, 2 Poles, Wróblewski and Olszewski, were the first who were able to make the oxygen liquid. So we have a good tradition. And in fact, we started to send apparatus in space something like 50 years ago. This was in the framework of the Intercosmos program. 45 years ago, the Center of Space Research of Polish Academy of Sciences was created, and this was really a breakthrough. Even today, CBK PAN is the major player concerning our participation in scientific mission in numerous ESA missions. But the real breakthrough was 10 years ago when Poland entered ESA. Thanks to that, many companies emerged from universities, from scientific institutes, and they started activity on their own. And today we have something like 30 companies who are really dedicated to space, but something like 400 of them is registered in ESA tenders. 150 already won some tenders. So it shows that the space activity also influence other sectors, and this is very, very important information for us. During those 10 years, those companies developed something like 100 different technologies, which is a real success, because doing something for science, they've done something which we can use now today in many other applications. So what is the current status of Poland in ESA? Well, I have counted that out of 24 current and planned ESA missions, Poland is participating in 11 of them. 11 out of 24, which is almost every second mission of ESA is with Poland. Let me list them, those 11 missions, but I need to look into my notes because I cannot remember all of them. What is interesting that we go to every celestial body essentially in our solar system. We participate in Solar Orbiter, flying to Sun. We participate in Bepi Colombo, going to Mercury, in Venus Express, in Mars Express and ExoMars, JUICE for Jupiter, Cassini-Huygens, also Rosetta going to Comet. We also observe outer space, distance universe, with missions like for example, observing gamma reverse and other distant phenomena. So also we make important contribution for the Copernicus system by providing one of the 4 data centers for Copernicus system. And this is becoming our specialty in some sense, because the companies are growing and they offer more and more services related to satellite Earth observation. And we see that this is really an important market. Now every country builds and sends satellites, but the bottleneck is now really how to make use of the data which can be obtained from those satellites observing Earth. And other specialties which are emerging are, of course, scientific instrument. This is because our sector emerged from the scientific institutions. Also robotics, also some automations, and I hope it will be more. So today the space sector has something like 20,000 employees already, and it's still growing. So I think that's all from one side. This is just a brief introduction, but I think we will hear much more about ESA and about Poland, how Poland participates in ESA from the Director General, Mr. Aschbacher.
Okay, so thank you very much, Grzegorz Wrochna. Very happy to hear all the statistics which you have just mentioned. You have mentioned all the missions and all the companies where Poland is very successfully involved. Really happy 10th anniversary, happy 10th birthday also from my side. Poland is a very good member of ESA, a very strong member, and there's a lot of expertise to offer. And in fact, I really would like to acknowledge Rafal, who has just also appeared on screen, being, of course, of Polish origin, one of the big success stories of how you can really bring a brilliant idea to economic success. And what he has done is, I think, really amazing. If I simplify it in a couple of words, to create one of the biggest companies in Earth observation or in space in general in Europe, and really complements to the many talents which Poland has, and of course Rafal being with us here in particular, but also there are many other companies in Poland who are doing extremely good work. So if you allow, I have put a few slides together. I can show a little bit of an overview of what, from an ESA perspective, Poland is for us and how we see it. Of course, it's always a mix of how you see it from your side to ESA and from ESA to your side, and see how we can find some common activities and projects together. So maybe if you go to the next slide, and the next one more, shows just on one slide what ESA is for those who are not so familiar with European Space Agency. You see here a few facts. We have a budget per year of about 7 billion, and it keeps actually increasing. This year was 10% more than last year, which is good news. Of course, I still want to increase it further in order to come closer to the budget of NASA, which is much bigger than the one of ESA. But I have to say that even with less budget, we are doing incredibly good work, and the missions, some of them are just listed by Professor Wrochner, are really outstanding and among the best missions in the world. And the technology which we have in Europe is really, really excellent. And this is fair to say. Of course, all this is done in the member states, by industry, and by various research institutions. We have a bit more than 5,500 people are working in ESA in different establishments. Headquarters is in Paris, but the biggest establishment is in the Netherlands, in Noordwijk. But we also have big establishments in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, in the UK, and a few other places, so quite spread across Europe. Not everyone may know, but we have a different set of membership than the European Union. We have 22 members. Most of them are the EU members, but not exactly the same. For example, in ESA, we also have members like the UK, Switzerland and Norway, which are countries with a very good space capability, which are not members of the EU, as you know. And what we do is basically developing satellites, rockets, space technology, data analytics systems, really across the whole board. And ESA is one of the few agencies worldwide, space agencies, who is really covering all the segments of space, and I think at really good quality. Next one. So here you see some examples of the call it success stories, or where we are working in the space domain. Of course, launches is a very important one. Without launches, you cannot get your satellites into orbit. And Europe has a long history of different rockets. It started with Ariane 1. Now we have Ariane 5, which is flying. We are preparing for the launch of Ariane 6. And in the upper segment, but you also have a smaller rocket called Vega C, will be having its maiden flight coming up actually in less than a month, around mid-July. We're just settling the date right now. But this will again be a new generation of a rocket, which is launching a lot of the Earth observation satellites with a payload up to about 2,400 kilos. Then technology development. Also, you see here the word independence and sovereignty. Of course, these are important terminology, especially in the context of the war we have in Ukraine. And we really need to create this independence of space technology for Europe, and through components, through access to space, through rockets, but also big space programs. Copernicus was mentioned, Galileo was mentioned, and other programs where we need to make sure that European citizens have the information they need, have access to infrastructure which they need in telecommunications, navigation, Earth observation, but also many other things. Of course, Galileo is a flagship, and is a very important one. Also there we work, of course, for a civilian signal, but also a military signal, or let's say what is called the PRS signal, which is limited to a certain number of users, but certainly the defense community being a large user community there. Then you see here on the bottom right, of course, the astronauts are being a highlight. We are selecting new astronauts at the end of the year. I will, out of a pool of applications where we had almost 23,000 applications, I will select at the end of a long, more than 1 year cycle, 4 to 6 astronauts, which will be added to the current 7 astronauts which we have. And you have mentioned it, Professor Wrochner, you are very good in data platforms, in accessing and disseminating data. And you see here on the top right, the Earth observation program which disseminates huge volumes of data. About 25 terabytes are received, and 250 terabytes per day are being disseminated through platforms. And the DS platform, where Poland has 1 out of 4, is one very important way of getting access to this data. Next one. ESA Agenda 2025 is really the strategy of which we have identified. I've become DG of ESA last year, and I have put a strategy on the table which was elaborated with the member states, also with Poland, and to really see what Europe needs to do. And you see here a number of priorities that are highlighted, of course, working very close with the European Union. ESA and European Union need very strong relations. Commercialization is a top priority. Safety and security, don't need to explain the importance of it these days. Program challenges, where we have quite a few, and the transformation inside of ESA as an institution, which of course is also a very important exercise. On the right-hand side, you see some of the domains where Europe is really top of the world, in Earth observation, in navigation, in science, in telecommunication. We are among the best in the world in terms of satellites, products, data which we deliver. But then there are other domains where we need to catch up. I take broadband internet as one example. Of course, all of you know Starlink from SpaceX, which is about to dominate broadband internet from space, and Europe has nothing comparable, and we're building up now a similar capability. Reusable launchers, again, SpaceX being the bigger company to look at and see what Europe can do. In space exploration, we have excellent capabilities, but much smaller than NASA, but certainly very interesting, plus a few other ones. But certainly one domain which is really keeping me personally very occupied, and which is a top strategy and top priority for me, is commercialization, how to convert our space technology into commercial products. And again, when we see Rafal among us, he is one of the best examples in Europe who has managed to really convert top technology into a very successful commercial company and products that are being sold on the market. Next one. Poland and ESA, next slide. So here you see the overall budget and see how Poland compares to all the other countries. As you see, the budget of Poland is a bit less than 1%. Is moderate, I should say. I would certainly hope that there is a strong effort made at this ministerial to increase this budget. At the moment, Poland compares with countries like the Czech Republic, Luxembourg, and similar countries. But Poland, being such a big nation with so many participants, a very well-growing economy. Of course, now with the war in Ukraine, the pressure is a bit high at the moment, but still Poland is depending and is using a lot the space technology for in everyday life, from weather forecasting over Earth observation, for disaster management, of course, in the defense part and the security part, in telecommunications, navigation, and many other parts. And Mr. Wrochner was just mentioning some of the highlights in exploring the universe, where Poland is extremely heavily involved. And I think there's really an interest on our side, and certainly on the side of myself as DG of ESA, to get a stronger involvement of Poland, because I know that they have excellent capabilities and we want to build them into our European space programs. Next one. This shows a bit the domains that where Poland is active. You see here on the bottom, it's probably a bit small on the screens, but where you get most contracts is in domains like general technology developments, in Earth observation, also in the science program, space safety, telecommunications, navigation, and a few other domains. And this is really spread, I would say, across different activities, which is good because it shows that you have a variety of different technologies and capabilities, and they need, of course, to be converted also into partially into the commercial successes, or in really creating a niche market where Poland is one among the best in Europe in providing certain types of products. Next slide. Yeah, this is an example where Poland is really quite active. Space is really benefiting Poland. You see an example of Earth observation, using satellite data for agricultural monitoring, for land mapping, geographic analysis. You see here in the image, maybe in the top left, the name of Copernicus. Of course, we have named one of the two flagship programs of Europe after your famous physicist, astrophysicist, and who was quite disruptive 500 years ago when he was putting the theory on the solar system into the public. And and really a great role model and a great name to which we want to connect one of our very famous space programs, Copernicus program. In fact, incidentally, I have been personally involved in building up Copernicus for about 20 years before I became Director General of ESA. And I have to say my heart is very close to Copernicus and therefore also to Poland, because this is really just such a fascinating project. Next one. Yeah, this shows the subscriptions of Poland at ministerial councils. So the ministerial councils are those moments within ESA when money is being put into programs. We have two types of activities. One is called the mandatory program, which you see here in the yellow color. The mandatory program across ESA is about 20% of our budget, and the other 80% are optional programs. That means programs where member states can subscribe as much as they want or nothing, depending on the capabilities in the country and where they want to put their strategic focus. What we see here, these are three different ministerial conferences, 2012, 2016, and 2019. Now we have one coming up in November. And I really hope for two things here on Poland, and I know that Poland is in good preparation of doing that. The first one is that, of course, the next bar, which will be 2022, is much higher than 2019, because in terms of GDP and capabilities, Poland has really a lot of capabilities and opportunities, because the rule in ESA is if money is put in by the government, we give it back to the country through industrial contracts, which are won by the companies through competition. So this is certainly a very competitive process, but also allows countries to participate in huge European programs with their national subscription. But the other thing I would like to see is that the yellow part of this column is much smaller compared to the other colors, because yellow is the mandatory program. That means the optional programs, and there's really room for improvement, are the ones that in the ESA average is about 80%, and the yellow part is about 20%. And here we see the reverse. So this should certainly, in my opinion, be increasing the colors. The different colors are different programs like telecommunication, technology development, navigation, Earth observation, and so on. And certainly there I would hope a diversification of the various investments. The next slide shows some of the success stories. And in fact, Professor Wrochner was only outlining some of them. I have a few other examples here, but it is true that Poland is really involved in about half of our missions, of our satellites that go to explore the universe or observe our planet Earth, because you have a variety of successful industries and successful companies who are delivering components or technology in a competitive process. That means you have been winning on open competition these various contracts. There are three examples here. One is Comet Interceptor, where Poland has a capability and a participation in an instrument where you have, in fact, there's a company called it's the Space Research Center of the Polish Academy of Sciences, which is involved in the Comet Interceptor. Then there's CREO-DIAS, which is one of the DIASes I mentioned before, access to Copernicus data. And there's a robotic arm, which is produced to remove debris. Means trash in space. And also here, a company called PIAP was involved and is producing here the components. The next slide, or next example, shows some work on Electra and Euclid, again with strong Polish participation in both satellites on Electra and on Euclid. Poland is delivering the mechanical ground support equipment, which is a very essential part in building up the mission for these two space science missions, which we have. Sena Polska, in fact, was the one winning the MGSC for Euclid. And I think it was also Sena Polska, yes, for the other mission on Electra. Next slide. Next slide shows a few examples of different nature. So the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters. This is a charter where satellite data are delivered in case of crisis, not necessarily the crisis in Ukraine, but natural disasters like floodings, fires, earthquakes, when quickly data is needed to show what to help people. And here Poland is developing the operations management and software development for the charter portal. The portal is the web interface where the information is provided for the participants of the charter. Then the other example is the joint test and operation of a European optical network, as you see here on space safety. Again, this is a company called Sibylla, which is involved and has been winning this contract. And then on the right-hand side, you see another mission, again from space science, where a fine guidance system was provided or is developed by a Polish company, and the Polish Academy of Sciences, together with a Polish company which is developing these components. The next example. Yeah, this shows here the subscriptions as they have been taking place. You see here a number of curves. I'm not going into detail. It's a bit similar information as we had, but as I had shown before. Maybe the information on the right-hand side in this box is interesting because it shows the GDP ratio of Poland in the ESA context with all the other ESA member states compared, which is 2.9%. You see the figure here at the bottom. And this is the subscription Poland will do because Poland is a member of ESA, and there the mandatory subscription is according to the GDP in comparison with the other countries, so those 2.9%. And then you have the other figure on top, which is the optional programs, 0.36, which is the subscriptions on programs according to capabilities or interests of the member states, and of course according to availability of funding in a member state. And this is what I mentioned before, where we are having now in November this year, we have a ministerial conference. In fact, I'm in very close contact with Polska, the Polish space agency, but also your various industry players. And I know that there's quite a lot of substance and a lot of offers that can be made. You have a very ambitious also national strategy on space, building up a constellation, which I heard recently. So these are very exciting projects. And of course, ESA is a good mechanism and a good way of realizing national dreams, national priorities through a European agenda, and really make Poland a strong space agency. Next one shows some of the examples of the ministerial. Can click once more. And this really is the ambition which I would like to reach over, in fact, 2 ministerial conferences. One is the one taking place now in 2022, but the next one will be in 2025. And what I really want to achieve, and I hope you can read it in this slide here, is when you see in this graph, there's the autonomy on the bottom scale on the x-axis, and there's capacity on the y-axis. And you see here on the top right, you see countries like the United States, China, and Russia, which have both high autonomy but also high capacity. And you see Europe here in terms of capacity extremely high, and actually higher than some other countries, but not at the level of autonomy. Autonomy, of course, being defined through a number of different technologies that you need to master in order to really have this autonomous situation. So there, I really would like to achieve that Europe is moving into this top right corner of this diagram, becoming and being a stronger space power in order to really benefit from all the opportunities. I should probably say that the space market is a hugely growing market. It's one of the markets that has been growing even through COVID and also this year, despite all the crises we have. But space really is one that is growing quite rapidly, but also the commercialization of space is changing things drastically. And there are huge opportunities out there in the US, in China, in other countries, and Europe has the talent, has the expertise, and should really benefit from this and be a big player in the global landscape of space. Next slide. There are some of the elements how this will be done. So we have the ministerial conference. I mentioned it. It will take place in Paris. We have one big ambition to really accelerate the European society and make good use of space. I'm putting together a very ambitious program of about 16 billion altogether, and of course to be funded by all the member states. And we are just discussing right now with all the countries on what are the opportunities for Poland, what are the opportunities for France, for Germany, for Italy, and make sure that we get a package together at the end of the day, which is really attractive and is allowing big programs to go ahead, but where also all companies can be involved through their activities. Next one. Yeah, shows that one focus of my package is really commercialization. There's about 2 billion euros of programs that really focus or aiming at commercialization activities. They are going across the various domains from telecom to even human robotic exploration, of course, Earth observation, navigation. There are a number of specific activities, even one program called Scale Up, where we really want to foster commercialization across the board. So altogether, out of the 16 billion mentioned before, about 2 billion really are aiming at fostering and accelerating commercialization. Climate change, of course, also a big topic because we need to look after our planet, making sure that our carbon neutrality is reached, that our economy is converting properly, and certainly there are a number of programs which will support exactly this climate agenda. Next one. Another set of examples is listed here. Just pick out a few of the, I would say, very good examples which we put on the table. One is called Moonlight, and this is actually quite interesting because what we are doing here is exactly what we're doing on Earth. That means having a satellite-based communications network. So if you use your mobile phone, here you, of course, have a ground network which is connecting it, but it is an integrated ground network with satellites. And on the moon, if you have robots or you have rovers or astronauts, they need to communicate. And there we will establish a communications network on the moon that allows communication on the moon, but also with Earth, so that this information flow can work properly. And we want to do the same for navigation, that also on the moon, you need to navigate the rovers, the astronauts on the moon, like just we do it on Earth with Galileo or GPS. And we will establish and propose also a program that is doing exactly that. You can imagine this has huge commercial potential because somebody will buy a communication service, a navigation service, or other space agencies, private companies that are coming and exploring the moon or taking resources. And this is certainly a booming market for the next decade. Another example is in-orbit servicing, which you see here on the bottom. Again, this is a future domain where space debris is removed with satellites. And you can either have satellites that remove other satellites or like in-orbit servicing, where you build up a circular economy, where you fuel satellites, where you have a service in orbit in order to extend the lifetime of these satellites. Of course, artists with telecommunications, artificial intelligence, service development is another big package of our ministerial package. Next one. Shows some space science missions. You have mentioned them already. Athena, LISA are two examples which are of big science missions coming up, exploring the dark universe, dark matter, dark energy, some very mysterious elements of astrophysics, and there will be missions to look really into these elements and to better understand the basic questions of our universe. Where do we come from? What is happening out there? Where do we go? How is the universe developing? And certainly our space missions are among the best in the world. We have just recently published the third data series of Gaia with a mapping of 2 billion objects in the Milky Way, which will produce an enormous amount of publications in different domains. Next one. Next slide shows some of the activities we're doing to go back to the moon. I'm sure you all hear about the Artemis project, the biggest ever built rocket in the history called SLS or the Artemis 1 mission will now launch again and go back to the moon, led by NASA. But Europe is participating in this mission with very crucial elements. Without that, NASA could not go back to the moon. It's called the European Service Module. And we really work hand in hand with NASA on this moon exploration. We also will propose at the ministerial what is called Argonaut, which is a European large logistics lender. It's basically a big truck which is bringing a huge mass from our planet to the moon, about 1.5 tons of mass that we can bring to the moon. We will offer this proposal for subscriptions in November. The idea is that by the end of the decade, this satellite or this mission will be ready and is then flying to the moon once a year with 1.5 tons, which is opening up a commercial business. It's like a delivery company which is bringing rovers mass to the moon, which of course will build up a new economy on the moon surface. ExoMars is another example on the right-hand side, where we work also with NASA to explore the Mars surface. It has a drill on the rover, which will dig into the Mars surface and look for life on Mars or traces of life on Mars. You can imagine how exciting this is, because this is certainly something where we want to understand whether there has been life on Mars, and if there has been life, maybe you can find some traces of life underground, and that's exactly what we're doing with this rover. Next one. Next one shows Earth observation. Of course, Earth observation is an application that is becoming very mature. A lot of commercial opportunities are opening up here. We have science missions, we have commercial missions. I'm not going into details, but just to say that Europe is among the best in the world to really have built up a capacity that is gold standard worldwide. We work with NASA and we work with all the others, but certainly our technology is key here and is among the best providers of huge amounts of data to understand, to monitor our planet and really make best use of the resources which we have. Next one. Yeah, there's one component or one topic called the accelerators. And last year, I was asking 9 wise people to give me good directions and guidance and support on where and how we should put space at the service of people. And to make the long story short, the result of this consultation, which was extremely interesting, was proposing 3 so-called accelerators. That means big flagship programs of the future, of the size of Copernicus and Galileo, if not bigger. And they are focusing, as you see here on the slide, on topics like green future, which is climate change, on rapid and resilient crisis response, which is really all kinds of crises. Now with Ukraine, of course, we have got another crisis in front of our door, which we are addressing, but also protecting our European space assets. That means to make sure that our satellites and astronauts are safe in orbit, and we really have the infrastructure to do that. We have also identified 2 inspirators. One is human exploration, that means astronauts, and Europe to increase its astronautic capability. That means more independence in getting astronauts into space. Today, as you know, we fly with NASA, but we certainly would like to increase our independence. And there I'm putting a group together of another group of high-level advisors to see what needs to be done to make decisions next year for Europe's involvement in human exploration. And then there's an example on ICEYE moon sample return, which really aims at getting a sample from a moon of Jupiter or Saturn and bring it back to Earth and analyze what you see there, again, looking for traces of life from these objects. And this was a very interesting work, politically fully endorsed by our member states. And one of these 9 wise people is actually sitting with us. One of them was Rafal, together with some ex-ministers, ex-DGs. So it's a very selected group of people. And really thank you once more, Rafal, for the fantastic work and contributions you and the other colleagues have made in order to really lay out the first steps of a long-term future involvement of building up big flagship programs, which Europe really needs to move space upwards. Next one. why investing in the future through ESA? And here you have a number of arguments or points which I think are worth highlighting. Many of you may know them, but just to make sure that this is really something that is well understood. First of all, we are the largest pan-European agency working in R&D. We are spending, as I said before, 7 billion per year. And we are really doing it and managing these projects ourselves. We're not just giving money, but we're really managing those with project management capability. I think we have generally, and it is generally confirmed and agreed that the project management capability of ESA is good. We're building some of the best spacecraft. We have a huge track record that goes back to 1975, building satellites and rockets, and all of them of top quality, top performance. We work with industry in all segments. And I think this is really something that is quite unique in Europe and maybe even worldwide. We have really projects that are large and small, from 100K to billions of euros programs. And we have a very flexible procurement system that is really catering to all kinds of needs, big and small, but also more commercial or more R&D driven. And this is really a very important aspect of how we work. Certainly one element I would like to push very strongly is the commercialization aspect. And this is something that is coming up very strongly in the US, and certainly Europe needs to do exactly the same. And I think the last bullet is quite important for industry. We have a very strong industrial policy toolbox. The IPR really stays with industry. This is key and very important for industry because they want to make business out of this. So this is the policy in ESA. Every money that is won by us is won through a competitive process. That means you have to compete against somebody else, and sometimes a lot of other companies. And we have a very strong tool set to really support SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, to make sure that we create this ecosystem of very active, dynamic space companies of all size, not only working with the big ones, but really creating smaller and developing the smaller sector. And in fact, Poland is extremely good in that. You have a very big share of medium and smaller companies which are working in space. That's the last slide. Thank you, and very happy to answer some questions, or maybe hand over to Rafał if you want to compliment and add a few words. Thank you.
So, of course, certainly, if I can, I am happy to. I actually was reading the agenda for the preparation for this, and my task was here to introduce Mr. Aschbacher, Director General, and so I thought about this quite a lot, and I wanted to find some interesting facts, because I believe we are all aware that Józef Aschbacher, Director General, has really been looking at how to commercialize new space in Europe, and really how to change the way ESA operates and how to adapt the way ESA operates to the market. And we have seen this strongly from startup perspective. So that's definitely a contribution that's recognized, and I truly want to congratulate him for doing that. Now, while I was searching for the facts, I found out that his space career started as a young graduate trainee at European Space Agency, which many of you may know as a program. YGT is an excellent way to start your space career, and as a CEO of a space company, I can confirm that we hire virtually every single YGT that applies to us. And it seems that you can either become an employee of ICEYE or Director General. So I will recommend this program, and it seems fascinating that it has the history has turned a circle, and Józef, you starting from IGT, you ended up leading the whole organization. So I can comment perhaps a little bit on the accelerators and the inspirators, and why to invest in space. Being part of those discussions, it really seemed like the discussion in Europe overall is necessary, and I don't think it's often looked at as an investment that has a return that comes to it. And I think if you start actually looking at the numbers, I can share with you the numbers from ICEYE's perspective, but ICEYE as a company has been operational since 2015. And over those 7 years, we have managed to create 450 space-related jobs in Europe. we have raised a total of $300 million of capital. And that is a capital that has flown mainly from the United States and other part of the world into Europe. And with that capital, we have managed to build the largest existing SAR constellation, which has been multiple times used already to help both European governments and international governments manage natural catastrophes. So the funny thing is that you may not even realize, but many things that have been happening over the last few years have actually been supported by some of the activity that emerged out of the new space. And now, why am I bringing this over here is I don't think any of that would have been possible if it was not for the existence of ESA and programs like YGT and programs like accelerators. So I do want to take this moment to just double emphasize that coming from experience at ICEYE, that investment in space does really come back to the European community as such, and also offers an exciting amount of fun while executing on it.
So if I can also add a few words commenting the presentation of Director Aschbacher. I must say that the program he presented fits very well into our national ambitions. In fact, it goes hand in hand, and therefore we really make a big effort to increase our optional contribution to ESA. It is not easy after the pandemic and after the Ukrainian war, because you know that we have accepted something like 3 million refugees from the Ukraine, and we support Ukraine in many different ways. So, and of course, I mean, the prices of energy rising and so on. So the situation of the national budget is not easy. But at the same time, the situation in Ukraine shows us that we have to invest in the asset in space, because this is the only way to get independence, to ensure sovereignty. Maybe this will also influence the decision makers, and so we can hope for increasing the optional contribution as well. And we really would like to have it, because the program you have outlined is very attractive to us. Let me just comment again on the inspirators and accelerators. One of the accelerators is about space safety, and Poland is contributing the largest amount of data to the EU SST consortium. We are now building new sensors, and we have other plans to develop other sensors, maybe even one in space on the satellite. So that's one area. Two others are related to Earth observation. I mean, the Green Planet and the crisis prevention and management. And we have our plans to build some our satellites. And then on the other hand, we are making progress in this data centers. So we plan to build our national satellite information system, which will be not only a kind of a DIAS, but some 2 layers on top of that. One can, in this kind of system, one can collect the data from Copernicus system, from national satellites, from commercial satellites, maybe even from drones, and make them available to users who can provide different kind of algorithms, different kind of programs, different kind of services to use the data. We already ordered some preliminary, some prototype projects like orthophoto map or some map of changes of the land, map of humidity of the land. So this kind of projects, this kind of services could be added on top of the data. So we would like to build the system in such a way that it is open also to other countries. And talking to other space agencies of other countries, I try to convince them that we have to agree on some kind of the standards. So this kind of data centers, satellite data centers of different countries, can work together as a one big virtual data center. So the Copernicus program could be also enhanced by adding the data from national satellites, and then Europe can be really powerful, because usually the national satellites, they're just few, but they are high resolution. So if we put the data together, I mean, we can really have an excellent system and an order of magnitude better system. And this is somehow our specialty, and we want to bring it as a kind of an added value to ESA program, which will be in fact the realization of the foundation of these two accelerators, the Green Planet and the crisis management. Concerning the crisis prevention and management, I think that the only way to make it really happen is to create a new ESA center, and I think Poland would be an excellent place for that, for several reasons. First of all, we already have such a crisis center run by, again, CBK PAN. It plays, for example, very important role during some flood in Poland, during the forest fires in Białowieża forest. So we already have one on the country level. Moreover, you have mentioned yourself that our companies are participating in this international effort on space and disasters. And third, I mean, we are accustomed to crisis. We always are subject to some crisis, so we are experts on living on crises. So I believe that this could be a real added value to the ESA program. Also, inspirators. I mean, the inspirators are really important. I mean, to attract young people, and nothing attracts more than just astronauts. Therefore, we are very happy that 22 Polish candidates passed the first level of the selection, and we really hope that we have one astronaut, at least one from Poland, in the ESA. So I'm sure this would be an important argument for decision makers to increase the budget, because every newspaper will certainly write about ESA. But in order to make it happen, we really need to present the value of ESA to people in our country, to our decision makers. Therefore, we are organizing a very important event on 27-28 October, at the biggest event celebrating 10 years of Poland in ESA, and therefore I'd like to invite you, Director General, to participate in person with this meeting, and to bring your directors with us, because we really want to show all the advantages of being in ESA, and all the opportunities which are created by our participation to ESA. So please feel invited to participate in this event. Your presence is really crucial for the success.
Would be happy to come there to look at the dates. Maybe just a word, since Rafal was mentioning young graduates and that we are acquiring. The ones that Rafal does not hire in ICEYE, would really like to also speak to this Polish community here to look at ESA and apply for jobs. We do need good young people in the engineering, mathematics, but also sometimes business, administrative support, really across the board. And have a look at the websites, and most of our jobs are really, all of them are advertised, and I really would like to increase the Polish population. We have a couple of Polish people in ESA, but not enough, and I really would like to increase that. I think that would be really, I would say, an easy thing to look at, and increase a bit our links as well. To a bit what you said before on Mr. Wrochna on the capabilities. Yes, I can only confirm Poland has a lot to offer and goes really on different domains. You mentioned accelerators, particularly the one on Protect. I think that is something that is particularly suited, and I can only support what you said, that we should really sit down and look into the opportunities and the interest and what that means in very practical terms. And I think this is something certainly I will do anyway as part of my job in consulting you in Poland. But I think that's really something I would like to follow through.
Director General, we have a lot of questions, but we don't have a lot of time. So maybe I will choose 3 of them and we'll ask very, very quickly. Okay. Let's go at the first question. One of the important topics you talked about is the green economy and climate change. How do you combine that with the fact that rocket launches into space, however, are creating a lot of CO2?
No, thanks. I mean, that's not the first time I hear the question, but let me just give you 2 facts. One is, it is true that a rocket, of course, is also polluting. I mean, this is normal. But the equivalent of a rocket launch is, or let's say one rocket launch is the equivalent of about 10 flights across the Atlantic. And, there are hundreds or thousands of flights across the Atlantic every single day. So yes, there is pollution and it's not to be neglected or ignored, but it's not, it's not completely out of range as sometimes people think it is. So it is, the scale is I would say, is not completely exaggerated. But the other point, and this is much more important, is that because we have satellites in orbit, they are measuring climate change, and they can tell us what happens on our planet. It is fair to say that without these satellites, and ICEYE is building some of them, we would not know what is the state of our planet and what is the state of our climate, and we would not even know about the severity of the CO2 emissions and all the climate accords which have been signed up, and the world is now finally recognizing that this is a big issue. So we would not even know that without having satellites to really measure, as we call it, taking the pulse of our planet every single minute. And this is what satellites are doing. So the benefit of having this information from space and launching satellites is much, much higher than, of course, some of the pollution that, of course, occurs as well. But this is certainly to be put in context. In addition, of course, we do work on cleaner propulsion and all this, and we will make major progress there as well. But this is certainly for the next generation when hydrogen becomes an option.
Okay, thank you very much. The second question. Poland currently is an overrepresented member state. How much their contribution need to increase to change the status of underrepresented?
In order to really, and you have seen the figures before, it's something like 0.4% compared to 2-something%. So there's a factor of 5 in between, which would be the equivalent of the Polish I would say GDP, or the size of the Polish economy as compared to the other countries, and the subscriptions on the optional scale. So yes, there's a lot of air and a lot of possibilities. Of course, they need to be built up, and this is clear. So you cannot overnight suddenly multiply the budget by a factor, but this has to be built up. And what I really want to stress here, and I've seen this in many countries in Europe, that what is working successfully, and Professor Wrochna knows this extremely well from POLSA, what is working well is to have a long-term strategy, and have a strategy that goes over a decade, and where you really say, I want to invest in space because that is a growth sector, that is giving us independence of information, data, and so on. And this is for me a priority where the Polish government is committing to, and it's not a one-off thing for this year and then forget about it next year. So this is really a long-term strategy, a long-term commitment which is needed. And the moment this is there, then companies are coming, and companies are creating new businesses, new opportunities, and they will actually do even more. They will not only create jobs and opportunities and help Poland to become a high technology country, but also they will attract money from outside. Again, I take the example of ICEYE with Rafale. They are a company who is attracting a lot of venture capital funding from the United States. And this for me is new money, fresh money that comes into the sector, not from the ministry or from the government, but really from the private sector, in this case, venture capital companies. And this is what I want to achieve, to help these companies in Poland, across Europe, to be created, to help them acquire through our products and our technology development, to acquire also money from other sources in order to fund the company and of course to sell the products to these customers. And this is really at the core of my commercial agenda. And I think in Poland there's a lot of opportunities, because Poland has the expertise, but also the spirit, the mindset to venture and to be entrepreneurial. And this is what is needed. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there.
Okay, so the last question, a more technical one. What do you think about AI-supported mission operations in terms of controlling and calculating flight dynamics parameters autonomously in real time in an automated way? How much ESA goes into this direction?
Yeah. Okay, the first part of the answer is, what do I believe? Absolutely convinced. It's already happening. We have actually flown recently the first AI chip on an Earth observation satellite, and we are now doing this for flight dynamics and collision avoidance, basically, where quick recognition and then adaptation to a certain situation is needed. So this will be the future, very clearly, that there will be a lot of investments made, and we are working on this also on the side of ESA. So yes, the short answer is this is a domain of the future, and yes, we are working in ESA, and I would be very happy to identify some opportunities in Poland where this might want to be further developed and even to a commercial level.
Okay, so I have felt that we didn't let Rafał speak too much. So maybe Rafał, would you like to add something? Because I know that your Polish fans are waiting for your voice also. Would you like to add something?
Sure. Being here, obviously, in the presence of Director General and the head of Polish Space Agency, I hardly think that I should be in the spotlight. The two other gentlemen are significantly more important. But I am.
Not true, Rafał. You are very important. You are the big star. Huh?
Yeah. I am happy to add a little bit on this. I think it is a very important discussion for us in Poland to have, and I'm glad that Bartosz, you have reached out and we had a conversation about this, and we managed to gather people around this sort of this event. And the truth is that we have, as many of the listeners or people on the line know, exceptionally talented young people. We have good universities. We have a long tradition of having very strong engineering, math, physics teachers. A very large amount of Polish employees, and most of them are in the engineering domain. It's actually quite clear, when you look at universities like in Warsaw, in Krakow, in Wrocław, in Gdańsk, there's actually quite a few of them that really produce world-class scientists. And many of them are either leaving Poland to other countries in Europe or leaving Europe altogether. And I think, we are all quite concerned about the fact that they are leaving Europe altogether. And then definitely we are concerned that they are leaving Poland. And now, why is that the case? I think it's really because they can't operate and work within the domain that they would like to. And many of them, like myself, for instance, wanted to work in space. For us, we were lucky. We managed to develop the company. We managed to hire a lot of people, but not all of them are as lucky. I think it's a true resource. I think we will see, both from the perspective of Europe as well as the perspective of Poland as a country, that well-educated, hardworking young people are an incredible resource that we have to leverage. And obviously I'm a little bit biased because I'm an engineer working in space, but I do have to say that this is one of those disciplines in which you can truly feel accomplished and you can truly enjoy your work on a daily basis. And I will be strongly encouraging all sorts of investment into space, because I think that it has a return on investment from the perspective of it does actually bring more money to the society that the society needs to spend. But I think the sort of the often omitted part of the return, which is, are we handing over opportunities to the society that the society is looking for? That part needs to be looked at very carefully, and we should sort of carefully plan for that. That if we are not investing in space, we are not going to have that industry, which means we are not going to open up the opportunities for the young people. And I've been looking at the comments in the chat, and and obviously I was also extremely excited about the ESA astronaut training announcement, and the 22,000 applications. What a number. The truth is that obviously Poland is looking for its own astronaut, right? There's the sheer volume of applications coming from Poland, I think, shows and speaks for itself in terms of what is the amount of interest that Poland, Polish society, and young people in Poland have in space. And so I'm really hoping that we are going to talk about this more, and being very open about this need, and try to cater to that demand. Because space is really something which has a positive return on investment, which I believe is very often not talked about.
Thank you very much, Professor. Professor, do you have something to add? I am talking to Professor Grzegorz Wrochna.
Just to summarize, in my last interview for Rzeczpospolita newspaper, I have underlined that the satellites are an infrastructure which is as important as any other infrastructure, like highways or power lines or fibers for internet and so on. And because of this infrastructure, we can gain or save literally billions, because if we are thinking about preventing some disasters, or improving agriculture, or making some donations for agriculture, or you can give many examples on the scale of the country. Those are really billions. So I really believe, and this was the title of this interview, that investing millions in satellite infrastructure can bring billions to the country. And I think it's a task for Director General of ESA, for me, and for every company to give the evidence, to convince society and decision makers that this is really true, that millions invested in the space infrastructure will bring billions to the nations. Thank you.
I can only confirm what you say. This is really what we do. We do studies of socioeconomic return. That means if you invest €1, how much goes back into the economy? Apart from, I would say, all the excitement that you create and all the technology you develop and all the jobs and so on, but there's really a return factor, and also the creation of new companies in new domains, small companies delivering some services in IT, in artificial intelligence, or similar domains, and this is fantastic. And I really see Poland as a country which is a young, dynamic country which is very open to new technologies and high-end technologies like space. And I think there's a lot of opportunities, and we are just at the beginning of exploring them and exploiting them. And I really would be more than happy to find many brilliant ideas and people who want to flourish and to develop something, and we have lots of opportunities there.
Okay, guys, our time is over. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Mr. Director. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. President. It was great pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much. Have a good vacation. I hope that you find a few days to take this kind of opportunity. So thank you, and we believe in space all the time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks a lot. A wszystkim Państwu też życzymy udanych wakacji. Paweł, widzimy się kiedy? We wrześniu?
We wrześniu, dokładnie. Po wakacjach.
Po wakacjach. Okej. Bye bye. Do zobaczenia. Thank you.